Hello, and welcome to our channel, Stories with Silas. We hope you enjoy watching.
Maya's hands shook as the Sheikh closed the case on $40 million of fraud that Dubai's most renowned jeweler had just authenticated as genuine. In 2 seconds, she'd seen what 2 hours of expert examination missed, and speaking would destroy everything she'd built in this merciless city. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The silence in Whitmore and Associates, Dubai's most prestigious jewelry establishment, was almost sacred. Located on the top floor of the Burj Plaza Tower, the boutique catered exclusively to royalty, billionaires and collectors who wouldn't blink at 7-figure price tags. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across display cases filled with treasures that would make most people's eyes water, not from beauty, but from the sheer impossibility of their worth. This was where the world's elite came when they wanted something truly extraordinary, something that whispered rather than shouted wealth. Maya Patel had never imagined she'd work in such a place. At 28, she was grateful just to have a job that paid her rent in this glittering, expensive city. She'd arrived in Dubai 3 years ago from Mumbai, carrying little more than hope and the skills her father had taught her in their tiny jewelry repair shop back home. While other girls her age had been playing with dolls, Maya had sat beside her father's workbench, learning to distinguish real stones from fakes, understanding the weight and feel of authentic gold, memorizing the subtle differences that separated the genuine from the counterfeit. But those skills meant nothing here. In Dubai, she was just another foreign worker, grateful for the opportunity to serve coffee and pastries to clients in Whitmore's VIP lounge while they conducted business worth more than she'd earn in several lifetimes. The job was simple: be invisible, be efficient, be respectful, never speak unless spoken to, never stare at the jewelry, never, ever offer an opinion. She'd learned these rules quickly, and she followed them religiously because she couldn't afford to lose this position. That Saturday morning started like any other. Maya arrived at 7 a.m., 2 hours before the store opened, to help prepare the VIP lounge. She arranged fresh roses in crystal vases, ensured the Italian espresso machine was spotless, and set out delicate porcelain cups on silver trays. Everything had to be perfect. Whitmore and Associates didn't just sell jewelry, they sold an experience, an atmosphere of unattainable luxury that made their clients feel like the royalty they often were. Around 9:30 a.m., the store manager, a stern British woman named Victoria Ashford, called a brief staff meeting. "We have a very important client coming in this morning," she announced, her crisp accent carrying the weight of significance. "Sheikh Hassan al-Rashid will be here at 10 a.m. for a private authentication session with Mr. Whitmore himself. He's brought a significant piece for verification, and we expect this appointment to take several hours. The VIP lounge must be impeccable, and service must be flawless." Maya nodded along with the other staff members. She'd heard of Sheikh Hassan, of course. Everyone in Dubai had. He was a legendary collector of rare gems, a man whose personal collection was rumored to rival some national museums. At 52, he'd spent 3 decades amassing treasures from across the globe, and his reputation for possessing an extraordinary eye for quality was well known in collector circles. As the staff dispersed to their stations, Maya's mind wandered briefly to her father back in Mumbai. Rajesh Patel had spent 40 years behind his small workbench, fixing broken chains, resizing rings, replacing lost stones for middle-class families who couldn't afford to shop at places like Whitmore and Associates. He'd never owned anything worth more than a few $1,000s, yet he could spot a fake stone from across his cramped shop. "Maya," he used to tell her, "machines can measure and calculate, but they can't feel. Your hands, your eyes, your instincts, these are your real tools." She smiled at the memory as she returned to the VIP lounge to wait. In an hour, she'd be serving coffee to a sheikh, while he authenticated a treasure worth more than her entire neighborhood back home. She'd be invisible, as always, watching from the sidelines as the real experts did their work. That was her role here, and she'd accepted it. What Maya didn't know was that in just a few hours, everything would change. Her father's lessons, dismissed as old-fashioned in this world of laser spectrometers and computerized analysis, would prove more valuable than the most sophisticated equipment money could buy, and that quiet, invisible waitress would see something that Dubai's most renowned gemologist would miss entirely. At precisely 10 a.m., the private elevator doors opened, and Sheikh Hassan al-Rashid stepped into Whitmore and Associates. He was a striking figure, tall and dignified, wearing a pristine white thobe with a perfectly folded gutra held in place by a golden aggle. His beard was neatly trimmed, and his dark eyes carried the sharp intelligence of someone who'd built an empire through careful observation and calculated decisions. Behind him walked two assistants, both carrying leather cases, and a bodyguard who positioned himself discreetly near the elevator. Victoria Ashford greeted him with practiced grace, her smile warm but professional. "Sheikh Hassan, welcome. Mr. Whitmore is expecting you in the private viewing room. Please, right this way." Maya watched from her position behind the VIP lounge's coffee station as the group passed through. She couldn't help but notice the tension in the Sheikh's shoulders, the slight tightness around his eyes. This wasn't the relaxed demeanor of a man coming to show off a new acquisition. This was someone carrying worry, maybe even doubt. Christopher Whitmore himself emerged from the private viewing room to greet his distinguished client. At 58, Whitmore was a legend in the gem trade, a third-generation jeweler whose family name was synonymous with expertise and integrity across the Middle East and Europe. He'd authenticated treasures for royal families, advised museums on acquisitions, and had personally handled some of the most significant gem transactions in recent history. His reputation was beyond reproach, built on decades of meticulous work and an almost supernatural ability to distinguish the authentic from the counterfeit. "Sheikh Hassan, my friend," Whitmore said warmly, extending his hand. "It's been too long. Please come in. I understand you have something you'd like me to examine." The Sheikh's response was measured, his voice carrying a hint of uncertainty that seemed unusual for a man of his stature. "Christopher, thank you for seeing me on such short notice. I need your expertise on a recent acquisition. Something doesn't feel right, and I trust your judgment above all others." They disappeared into the private viewing room, a windowless sanctuary designed specifically for high-value assessments. The room was equipped with every tool a modern gemologist could need: spectrometers, refractometers, microscopes with various magnification levels, ultraviolet lights, and precision scales accurate to 1,000th of a carat. It was a laboratory disguised as an elegant office, with mahogany paneling and leather chairs, maintaining the atmosphere of luxury that Whitmore's clients expected. Maya returned to her duties, preparing a tray with Arabic coffee, English breakfast tea, and a selection of French pastries. Victoria had instructed her to wait until called before entering the viewing room. These authentication sessions could take hours, and interruptions were unwelcome unless specifically requested. Through the heavy door, she could hear muffled voices, but couldn't make out the words. 45 minutes passed, then an hour, then 90 minutes. Maya refilled the coffee carafes twice, rearranged the pastries, and waited. Other staff members came and went, attending to the few other clients who'd scheduled appointments that morning, but everyone kept their voices low, aware that something significant was happening behind that closed door. Finally, at 11:45 a.m., Victoria appeared and gestured to Maya. "Bring the refreshments now, and remember, don't speak unless they address you directly." Maya lifted the heavy silver tray and followed Victoria to the viewing room. When the door opened, she was struck by the intensity of the scene. Sheikh Hassan sat in one of the leather chairs, his hands clasped tightly, his expression troubled. Christopher Whitmore stood at his examination table, bent over a microscope, his brow furrowed in concentration. Scattered across the white velvet cloth were various instruments, a jeweler's loupe, diamond testers, a refractometer, and several sheets of paper covered in notes and calculations. And there, in the center of everything, under a focused spotlight, sat the diamond. Even from across the room, even without any expertise, anyone could see it was magnificent. It was roughly the size of a quail's egg, cushion-cut, with what appeared to be flawless clarity. The light seemed to dance within it, throwing rainbow sparkles across the white cloth. It looked like something that belonged in a crown, in a museum, in the private collection of someone who'd paid $40 million for it. Maya set down the tray quietly on the side table, poured the coffee with practiced efficiency, and started to retreat. But something made her pause. Something about that stone, even from several feet away, looked wrong to her trained eye. The way it caught the light wasn't quite right. The dispersion pattern, the fire, the brilliance, something was off. She couldn't put her finger on it exactly, but her father's voice echoed in her head. "Trust your instincts, Maya. Your eyes know more than you think." Maya forced herself to look away from the diamond and continue her retreat toward the door. She was a waitress, nothing more. These men were experts, professionals with equipment worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and decades of experience between them. Who was she to question what she was seeing? Yet her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the door handle, and that nagging feeling in her gut wouldn't go away. "Thank you, Maya," Victoria said curtly from her position near the wall, dismissing her with a slight nod. But just as Maya stepped into the hallway, she heard Christopher Whitmore's voice, clear and confident. "Sheikh Hassan, you can rest easy. I've completed my examination." Maya froze just outside the door, which Victoria had left slightly ajar. She knew she should leave, knew she was risking her job by lingering, but something compelled her to stay and listen. "After 2 hours of comprehensive testing," Whitmore continued, his voice carrying the authority of absolute certainty, "I can confirm without any doubt that this diamond is authentic. It's a natural fancy, vivid yellow diamond, cushion-cut, weighing 52.14 carats. The clarity is internally flawless, which is extraordinarily rare for a stone of this size. The color saturation is exceptional, classified as fancy vivid, the highest grade possible. Frankly, Sheikh Hassan, this is one of the finest natural yellow diamonds I've examined in my entire career." There was a pause, and Maya could imagine the Sheikh's reaction, perhaps relief mixed with lingering uncertainty. "Are you absolutely certain, Christopher?" Sheikh Hassan's voice was quieter now, almost hesitant. "I paid Samuel Rothstein $40 million for this stone 3 weeks ago. He assured me it came from a private South African collection, with papers tracing its provenance back to 1968. But something has been bothering me. The weight feels wrong somehow. And the way it catches light, I can't explain it, but it doesn't feel like my other diamonds." Whitmore's response was patient but firm, the tone of a teacher addressing a nervous student. "Hassan, my friend, I understand your concern. $40 million is significant even for someone of your means, and you're right to be cautious, but I've tested this stone with every tool at my disposal. The refractive index is 2.417, precisely what we expect from diamond. The specific gravity is 3.52, exactly right. Under the spectroscope, it shows the characteristic absorption spectrum of a natural diamond. I've examined it under 10 times magnification and found no inclusions, no cloud formations, no internal stress patterns that would indicate synthetic origin or treatment." Maya's father had taught her about all these tests. She knew what the numbers meant, knew what the equipment was designed to detect, and yet, something was still wrong. She'd only glimpsed the stone for a few seconds, but those seconds had been enough for her trained eye to catch something that all those machines apparently hadn't. "I even tested for fluorescence," Whitmore continued. Maya could hear him moving around the room, likely demonstrating his thoroughness. Under ultraviolet light, it shows a faint blue fluorescence, which is common in natural diamonds. Everything about this stone screams authentic. Samuel Rothstein is one of the most respected dealers in the business. He wouldn't risk his reputation on a fake, not for any amount of money. "So the papers are legitimate?" Sheikh Hassan asked. "I've examined them carefully. The certificates appear genuine. The grading reports are from the Gemological Institute of America, and the documentation of the stone's history seems solid. I see no red flags whatsoever. Hassan, you haven't been cheated. This diamond is worth every penny you paid for it, perhaps even more. Yellow diamonds of this quality and size are becoming increasingly rare. In 10 years, it could be worth 60 or 70 million. There was a long silence. Maya could picture the sheikh holding the stone, turning it in his hands, wanting to believe what he was hearing, but unable to shake whatever instinct was troubling him. "Thank you, Christopher," he finally said, his voice carrying resignation and perhaps forced relief. "I trust your judgment. I suppose I've been paranoid. Too many stories of sophisticated fakes entering the market, of technology that can fool even the best experts. But if you say it's authentic, then it's authentic." "I stake my reputation on it," Whitmore said firmly. "This diamond is absolutely genuine." Maya's heart was pounding now. She needed to leave before Victoria noticed she was still standing there. But as she finally forced herself to walk away from the door, one thought kept repeating in her mind. "They're wrong. That diamond is fake, and I don't know why I know it, but I know it." Maya returned to the VIP lounge, her mind racing. She mechanically began clearing away unused pastries and wiping down already spotless surfaces, trying to appear busy while her thoughts spiraled. What was she supposed to do with this feeling, this certainty that something was terribly wrong? She was a waitress, a nobody, an immigrant from Mumbai who served coffee to people who wouldn't remember her face 5 minutes after she left the room. And yet, her father's training whispered persistently in her ear. She'd spent countless hours watching him work, learning the subtle signs that separated real from fake. He'd taught her that machines could be fooled, that paperwork could be forged, that even the most sophisticated equipment had limitations. "Technology measures what it's programmed to measure," he'd say. "But your eyes, Maya, they see the whole picture. They catch the things that don't add up, the tiny inconsistencies that reveal the truth." Through the partially open door, she could hear the men concluding their business. Sheikh Hassan was thanking Whitmore profusely, expressing his gratitude for the reassurance. Whitmore was recommending additional insurance coverage given the diamond's value. Victoria was discussing payment for the authentication service. Everything was wrapping up neatly, professionally, the way business was conducted at this level. Maya's hands gripped the edge of the coffee counter. If she said something now, what would happen? Best case scenario, they'd laugh at her presumption, dismiss her observation, and she'd be humiliated but still employed. Worst case scenario, she'd be fired immediately for overstepping her bounds so egregiously. Victoria would see it as an unforgivable breach of protocol. Speaking without being asked was bad enough, but contradicting Christopher Whitmore, questioning his expert opinion in front of a valued client, that was career suicide. And yet, $40 million. A fortune beyond her comprehension. If that diamond was fake, if her instincts were right, Sheikh Hassan was being robbed of an amount of money that could feed her entire neighborhood in Mumbai for decades. Could she really stay silent and let that happen? She thought of her father again, remembered the day a wealthy customer had brought in what was supposedly an antique gold necklace for repair. Her father had taken one look at it and gently, respectfully, informed the woman that the piece was gold-plated brass, not solid gold. The woman had been furious, insisted her late husband had bought it from a reputable dealer, but her father had stood firm, showing her the telltale signs, the wear patterns that revealed the truth. Later, the woman had returned to thank him. The dealer had indeed been a fraud, and my father's honesty had saved her from wasting money on additional fake pieces. "Maya?" Victoria's sharp voice cut through her thoughts. The manager had emerged from the viewing room and was looking at her expectantly. "Please bring the bill to the front desk. Sheikh Hassan is ready to settle his account." This was it. In a moment the sheikh would pay and leave, taking with him what Maya believed was a fake diamond and $40 million worth of false security. She had perhaps 30 seconds to make a decision that could change everything or nothing. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her palms were sweating. Every instinct for self-preservation screamed at her to keep her mouth shut, to remember her place, to be grateful for the job she had and not risk it on a hunch. She was a waitress, for God's sake. What did she know that Christopher Whitmore, with his decades of experience and his laboratory full of equipment, didn't know? But then she remembered the look on Sheikh Hassan's face when he'd asked if Whitmore was certain. That lingering doubt, that instinct that something wasn't right. The sheikh felt it too, she realized. He just didn't trust his own intuition over expert opinion and sophisticated technology. Maya picked up the bill with trembling hands and started walking toward the viewing room. With each step, she fought an internal war. 20 more steps, 15, 10. The door was just ahead. She could see Sheikh Hassan through the opening, carefully placing the diamond back into its velvet-lined case, while Whitmore looked on with satisfaction. 5 more steps. 3. She was at the doorway now, bill in hand, the perfect excuse to interrupt. This was her last chance. Speak now or forever, hold her peace. Let a man be defrauded or risk everything she'd worked for in Dubai. Maya took a deep breath and made her choice. "Excuse me?" Maya's voice came out quieter than she'd intended, barely above a whisper. No one seemed to hear her. Sheikh Hassan was fastening the clasp on the diamond case while Whitmore gathered his papers. Victoria stood near the door, checking her tablet. Maya cleared her throat and tried again, louder this time. "Excuse me, sir." "I'm sorry to interrupt." This time, all 3 heads turned toward her. Victoria's expression immediately hardened with displeasure. Whitmore looked mildly annoyed at the intrusion. Sheikh Hassan simply appeared confused about why the coffee girl was still standing there. "Maya!" Victoria said sharply, moving toward her. "This is not the time. Please wait outside." But Maya had committed now. There was no going back. "I apologize, truly. But may I see the diamond, just for a moment?" The room fell completely silent. It was the kind of silence that precedes either laughter or an explosion. Whitmore's face registered pure astonishment, as though the coffee machine itself had just requested to perform surgery. Victoria looked like she might physically drag Maya out of the room. Even Sheikh Hassan seemed taken aback by the audacity of the request. "What?" Victoria's voice was ice. "Maya, leave this room immediately. I'll speak with you in my office." But Sheikh Hassan raised his hand, stopping Victoria mid-stride. Something in his expression had shifted. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was that lingering doubt finding an unexpected voice. "Wait," he said quietly. Then, turning to Maya, "Why do you want to see it?" Maya's mouth went dry. Now that she had their attention, she needed to explain without sounding insane. "Sir, I grew up in my father's jewelry shop in Mumbai. He taught me to identify stones from the time I was very young. And when I saw your diamond earlier, something looked wrong to me." Whitmore actually laughed, a short, incredulous sound. "My dear girl, I've just spent 2 hours examining this stone with equipment that costs more than most people earn in a lifetime. I assure you, your concerns are misplaced." "With respect, Mr. Whitmore," Maya said, her voice steadier now, "I know you have all the equipment and all the expertise, but sometimes the eye catches what machines can't measure." "This is ridiculous," Victoria interjected, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Sheikh Hassan, I sincerely apologize for this outrageous interruption. This employee will be terminated immediately." "No." Sheikh Hassan's voice cut through the room with quiet authority. He was studying Maya with intense focus now, and something in his eyes suggested he was remembering his own doubts, his own instincts that had brought him here in the first place. "I want to hear what she has to say. What did you see?" Maya took a small step forward. "The dispersion pattern, sir. The way the light breaks apart inside the stone and creates fire. It's too perfect, too symmetrical. Natural diamonds have irregularities in how they disperse light, because their crystal structure has tiny variations, even in flawless stones. But what I saw looked mathematically precise, like it was engineered rather than grown." Whitmore's expression had transformed from amusement to irritation. "That's absurd. I've tested the refractive index, the specific gravity, everything. The measurements are exactly what they should be for a natural diamond." "I'm sure they are," Maya said carefully. "But, sir, I've heard my father talk about new synthetic diamonds that can fool almost every standard test. They're grown in laboratories using CVD or HPHT methods, and they're chemically identical to natural diamonds. The only way to catch them is through very specific tests that look for growth patterns, or through spectroscopy that can detect trace elements. Or sometimes, if you know what to look for, you can see it in the dispersion." Sheikh Hassan had gone very still. His hand moved unconsciously to the diamond case, resting on it protectively. "How certain are you?" Maya met his eyes, and in that moment she thought of her father. She thought of all those years watching him work, learning to trust what her eyes told her, even when logic suggested otherwise. "I'm certain enough to risk my job to tell you, sir." "That's all I can say." The Sheikh looked at Whitmore, then at Victoria, then back at Maya. The weight of his next decision seemed to fill the room like a physical presence. "Open the case," he said quietly. Sheikh Hassan unlatched the velvet-lined case with deliberate slowness, revealing the magnificent yellow diamond nestled within. Under the focused lights of the viewing room, it seemed to glow with an inner fire, casting golden reflections across the white examination cloth. It was breathtaking, the kind of stone that commanded reverence and awe. Maya approached the table, acutely aware that every eye in the room was fixed on her. Her hands weren't trembling anymore. Instead, a strange calm had settled over her, the same focused state her father would enter when examining a particularly challenging piece. She was back in Mumbai, back in that cramped shop, with her father's patient voice guiding her. "May I hold it?" she asked Sheikh Hassan. He nodded and carefully lifted the diamond from its case, placing it in Maya's outstretched palm. The moment the stone touched her skin, she knew. The weight was wrong. Not dramatically wrong, not in a way that would necessarily register consciously, but wrong nonetheless. It was perhaps 1 or 2% lighter than a natural diamond of that size should be. "The weight," she said softly, looking up at the Sheikh. "Does it feel right to you?" Sheikh Hassan's eyes widened slightly. "That's exactly what I said to Christopher. Something about the weight bothered me, but I couldn't explain why." Whitmore stepped forward, his patience clearly wearing thin. "The specific gravity tested at 352. which is precisely correct for diamond. I weighed the stone myself on a precision scale. 52. 14 carats, exactly as stated in the documentation. But specific gravity can be manipulated in lab-grown diamonds depending on the growth method, Maya countered gently. And if someone was sophisticated enough to create a fake this convincing, they'd ensure the carat weight matched the documentation. She held the diamond up to the light, rotating it slowly, watching how the light played through its facets. There it was again, that telltale sign. The dispersion was too uniform, too mechanically perfect. Natural diamonds, formed over millions of years under immense pressure and heat, had subtle irregularities in their crystal lattice. These irregularities created variations in how light dispersed through the stone. But this diamond broke light apart with mathematical precision, like a computer program rather than a natural phenomenon. "Look here," Maya said, angling the stone so Sheikh Hassan could see. "Watch how the light separates into colors. See how uniform it is? How perfectly symmetrical the fire pattern is across all the facets." Sheikh Hassan leaned in, his expression intense with concentration. "I see what you mean. It's almost too perfect." "Because natural formation is chaotic," Maya explained, her confidence growing as she spoke her father's words. "Even flawless diamonds have tiny variations in their crystal structure that affect light dispersion. You can't see the variations with your naked eye, but you can see their effect on how light behaves. This stone disperses light like it was designed by an engineer, not grown in the earth." Whitmore moved to the table, his face flushed. "This is pure speculation. The refractometer doesn't lie. The spectroscope doesn't lie. All my measurements confirm this is a natural diamond." "What type of spectroscopy did you use?" Maya asked, and immediately regretted the question. It sounded presumptuous, challenging, but Whitmore answered anyway, perhaps out of professional pride. "Standard UV, visible absorption spectroscopy. The absorption spectrum matched natural yellow diamond exactly." Maya nodded slowly. "But did you test for photoluminescence? Or check for specific nitrogen aggregation patterns? Some CVD lab-grown diamonds can pass standard spectroscopy, but show different patterns under photoluminescence testing." There was a long pause. Whitmore's expression had changed from irritation to something else, something harder to read. I did not perform photoluminescence spectroscopy. That equipment is at my other facility. It's rarely necessary for standard authentication." "But this isn't a standard authentication, is it?" Sheikh Hassan's voice was quiet, but edged with steel. "This is $40 million. Victoria had gone pale, understanding the implications of what was unfolding. If the waitress was right, if Christopher Whitmore had authenticated a fake diamond, the reputation damage to the establishment would be catastrophic. But if Maya was wrong, they'd humiliated a valued client and their most trusted expert based on a coffee server's hunch. Sheikh Hassan was staring at the diamond in Maya's hand, his jaw set with determination. "I want a second opinion," he said finally. "Not here. I want this stone tested at the Dubai Gemological Laboratory with the most comprehensive analysis available, every test, every method they have." The drive to the Dubai Gemological Laboratory was tense and silent. Sheikh Hassan had insisted that Maya accompany them, despite Victoria's protests. Whitmore had initially refused to come, claiming his professional reputation spoke for itself, but the Sheikh's quiet insistence left no room for argument. They all piled into the Sheikh's Mercedes, the diamond case secured between two bodyguards, and made their way through Dubai's gleaming streets toward the laboratory facility in the Dubai International Financial Center. Maya sat in the back seat, her earlier confidence now replaced with gnawing anxiety. What if she was wrong? What if her father's old-fashioned methods had failed her in this world of high-tech analysis? She'd just convinced a sheikh to question a renowned expert's opinion based on nothing more than a feeling and some observations about light dispersion. If the comprehensive testing proved Whitmore right, she wouldn't just lose her job. She'd be humiliated, possibly sued, certainly blacklisted from ever working in Dubai's luxury sector again. The Dubai Gemological Laboratory was a modern facility, all glass and steel, equipped with the most advanced gem testing equipment available anywhere in the world. Dr. Amira Hassan, the laboratory's director, met them in the reception area. She was a woman in her early 40s, wearing a white lab coat over professional attire, with sharp eyes that suggested she didn't suffer fools gladly. "Sheikh Hassan, what an unexpected visit," she said, shaking his hand warmly. Then, noticing Whitmore, her expression became more curious. "Christopher, I wasn't expecting to see you here. What brings you both to my laboratory?" Sheikh Hassan explained the situation concisely, his voice neutral but firm. "I need comprehensive testing on this diamond. Everything your facility can do. I want photoluminescence spectroscopy, diamond view imaging, whatever tests can definitively determine if this is natural or laboratory grown." Dr. Hassan's eyebrows rose slightly, and she glanced at Whitmore. "You've authenticated this stone already, I assume?" 2 hours of comprehensive testing," Whitmore said stiffly. "Every standard test confirms it's a natural, fancy, vivid yellow diamond, internally flawless, 52.14 carats. And yet you're here for a second opinion." Dr. Hassan's tone was diplomatic, but tinged with professional curiosity. She looked at Maya, who'd been standing silently to the side. "And who is this?" "The person who first noticed something might be wrong," Sheikh Hassan said simply. "She works at Whitmore and Associates." Dr. Hassan studied Maya for a moment, then nodded. "Very well, let's see what we have. Please, follow me to the testing laboratory." They entered a large room filled with sophisticated equipment that made Whitmore's examination tools look almost primitive by comparison. Dr. Hassan carefully removed the diamond from its case and placed it under a specialized microscope connected to a computer screen. "First, let's look at the growth patterns under magnification," she said, adjusting the focus. The diamond's interior appeared on the large screen, magnified hundreds of times. In natural diamonds, we expect to see irregular growth patterns, natural inclusions even in IF stones at this magnification, and certain characteristic features. Everyone leaned in, watching the screen. Maya could see Whitmore's jaw tightening as Dr. Hassan moved the stone under the lens, examining it from multiple angles. "Interesting," Dr. Hassan murmured. "The growth patterns are remarkably uniform." "Suspiciously uniform, I'd say. Let me try the diamond view." She moved the diamond to another piece of equipment, a specialized imaging system that used ultraviolet light to reveal growth structures invisible to normal examination. The room darkened automatically, and the diamond appeared on the screen in a startling new way, glowing with fluorescent patterns. The moment the image appeared, Dr. Hassan drew in a sharp breath. "There it is," she said quietly. The screen showed distinct striations, parallel lines running through the stone, in a pattern that was unmistakably artificial. Natural diamonds formed in random, chaotic patterns. But this stone displayed the telltale geometric regularity of laboratory growth. "This is a CVD diamond," Dr. Hassan announced, her voice professional but tinged with surprise. "Chemical vapor deposition, a very high-quality synthetic. It's been grown layer by layer in a laboratory chamber, which creates these characteristic growth lines. They're invisible to standard examination, but Diamond View reveals them clearly." The silence in the room was absolute. Sheikh Hassan's face had gone rigid. Whitmore looked as though he'd been physically struck. Victoria, who'd accompanied them despite not being invited, had turned completely white. Dr. Hassan continued her examination, running additional tests to confirm what the diamond view had already revealed. Each test added another nail to the coffin. The photoluminescence spectroscopy showed emission patterns consistent with chemical vapor deposition synthesis. Advanced infrared spectroscopy detected nitrogen aggregation patterns impossible in natural diamonds. Every sophisticated test that Whitmore hadn't performed told the same story. This was a laboratory-grown stone manufactured to deceive. How much? Sheikh Hassan's voice was controlled, but Maya could hear the fury simmering beneath the surface. How much is this synthetic actually worth? Dr. Hassan considered the question carefully. As a laboratory-grown diamond, given its size, color, and quality, perhaps $50,000 to $70,000, maybe $100,000 to the right buyer who appreciates synthetic stones. But compared to the $40 million you paid believing it was natural, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Sheikh Hassan closed his eyes briefly, his hand gripping the edge of the examination table. $40 million. He'd been defrauded of essentially the entire value of the stone. Someone had sold him a $100,000 lab creation and convinced him it was worth $40 million. Christopher Whitmore had gone completely silent, staring at the damning images on the screen as if willing them to disappear. His reputation, built over decades, had been destroyed in a single afternoon. He'd authenticated a fake with absolute confidence, had staked his professional credibility on it, and had been proven catastrophically wrong by a waitress who'd glanced at the stone for 2 seconds. "Christopher," Sheikh Hassan said quietly, turning to face the gemologist. "How did this happen? You told me you were certain. You said you'd stake your reputation on it." Whitmore's voice, when he finally spoke, was hollow. I performed every standard test. Everything I know how to do. The measurements were perfect. The documentation seemed authentic. Samuel Rothstein's reputation was impeccable. He looked up at Dr. Hassan, a desperate plea in his eyes. How was I supposed to know? How could anyone without this specific equipment know? "You should have recommended comprehensive testing from the start," Dr. Hassan said, not unkindly but firmly. "For a stone of this value, with such extraordinary claims, standard authentication isn't enough. CVD diamonds have become so sophisticated that they can fool traditional tests. That's why we developed these advanced methods. Any reputable authenticator should know this." Victoria, who'd been standing frozen near the door, finally found her voice. "Sheikh Hassan, Whitmore and Associates takes full responsibility for this error. We will, of course, refund your authentication fee and assist in any way possible with recovering your loss from the dealer who sold you this stone." "The authentication fee?" Sheikh Hassan's laugh was bitter. "Victoria, I've lost $40 million. Your authentication fee is meaningless." "Why?" He turned to Maya, and his expression softened slightly. "If not for this young woman, I would have left your establishment believing I owned one of the world's finest diamonds. I would have insured it as such, stored it as such, perhaps even used it as collateral for business transactions. The fraud would have continued indefinitely until someone else, someday, discovered the truth. How much more would I have lost by then?" Maya felt tears prickling her eyes, a mix of relief that she'd been right and sadness for what the Sheikh had lost. "I'm sorry this happened to you, sir." "Don't apologize," he said firmly. "You saved me from an even greater disaster. You had the courage to speak up when you had every reason to stay silent. You risked your job, your reputation, everything, to tell me a truth I needed to hear." He paused, studying her intently. "Your father taught you well. What will you do now?" "Doctor," Hassan asked the Sheikh, bringing the conversation back to practical matters. Sheikh Hassan's expression hardened with determination. Now I find Samuel Rothstein and get my $40 million back. And if he can't return it, I'll make sure he never defrauds anyone else again." He looked at the synthetic diamond, still glowing under the UV light, and his voice dropped to a whisper. "I trusted him. I trusted his reputation, his documentation, his word. And he betrayed that trust for profit." The weight of that betrayal filled the room like a physical presence. The confrontation with Samuel Rothstein happened 3 days later, though Maya only learned about it second-hand. The dealer, faced with irrefutable scientific evidence and the fury of one of the Middle East's most powerful collectors, had initially tried to claim ignorance. He insisted he'd purchased the stone in good faith from another dealer, that he too had been deceived. But Sheikh Hassan's investigators worked quickly, and what they uncovered was far more damning. Rothstein had been running an elaborate scheme for years, partnering with a laboratory in China that specialized in creating high-quality synthetic diamonds. The stones were grown to order, complete with forged GIA certificates and fabricated provenance documentation. He'd sold dozens of fake diamonds to collectors worldwide, banking on the fact that most buyers would never seek independent verification after his authentication. The synthetic yellow diamond had cost him approximately $80,000 to create and document. He'd sold it to Sheikh Hassan for $40 million, a profit margin that made most crimes look amateurish. By the end of the week, Rothstein was under arrest, his assets frozen, and an international investigation was underway to identify other victims. Sheikh Hassan would eventually recover most of his $40 million, though the process would take months and involve law enforcement across 3 continents. As for Maya, her life had transformed in ways she never imagined possible. The morning after the authentication at Dr. Hassan's laboratory, Sheikh Hassan had called her directly. She'd been sitting in her small apartment in Deira, still processing everything that had happened, when her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Miss Patel," his voice had been warm but businesslike, "I have a proposition for you. I'm establishing a new division within my investment company, focused on authenticating high-value gemstones and fine art. I need someone to lead it, someone with genuine expertise, someone who understands that technology is a tool, not a replacement for human judgment and experience. I'd like you to consider the position." Maya had been speechless. Leading a department? Her, a waitress from Mumbai who'd barely completed her degree before coming to Dubai. "I know what you're thinking," the Sheikh had continued. "You don't have formal credentials, no advanced degrees in gemology. But you have something more valuable. You have real knowledge, passed down through generations. You have the instinct and courage to trust what you see, even when experts tell you you're wrong. That's what I need. Everything else, the credentials, the certifications, we can arrange. I have connections at the Gemological Institute of America. They've agreed to fast-track you through their Diamond Graduate Program. You'll study, you'll get the formal recognition you deserve, and then you'll build a team that combines traditional expertise with modern technology." The salary he'd offered was more than Maya had earned in her previous 3 years combined. Enough to bring her mother from Mumbai, to get a proper apartment, to finally live without the constant anxiety of bills and rent. She'd accepted on the spot, tears streaming down her face. Victoria had called later that same day, her voice tight with forced professionalism. "Maya, I wanted to inform you personally that Whitmore and Associates is terminating your employment, effective immediately. Given the circumstances, I'm sure you understand this is necessary." Maya had almost laughed. "Victoria, I already have a new job. Sheikh Hassan hired me this morning." The silence on the other end had been profound. Christopher Whitmore's fate was less kind. Within a week, news of his failed authentication had spread through the collector community like wildfire. Clients began demanding re-examination of stones he'd authenticated. 3 more synthetic diamonds were discovered among pieces he'd certified as natural. His reputation, once unimpeachable, was in ruins. He announced his retirement within a month. A broken man who'd learned too late that confidence without humility was a recipe for disaster. Dr. Amira Hassan, impressed by Maya's observational skills, had agreed to mentor her personally. "You have a gift," she'd told Maya, "the kind that can't be taught in textbooks, but we can sharpen it, refine it, combine it with scientific rigor. You're going to be extraordinary." And slowly, Maya began to believe it might be true. 6 months later, Maya stood in her new office on the 23rd floor of the Al Fatan Tower, overlooking Dubai Marina. The space was modest but professional, with a proper gemological laboratory in the adjoining room, equipped with all the technology she'd once envied. But what made her smile every morning was the small workbench near the window, similar to her father's back in Mumbai, where she could examine stones the old-fashioned way, with her eyes and hands and instincts. She'd completed her GIA certification, earning top marks in her class. But more importantly, she'd built a small team of authenticators who combined traditional knowledge with modern technology. She'd hired 2 other experts from humble backgrounds, people who'd learned their craft through apprenticeship rather than university, whose hands knew what textbooks couldn't teach. Her father had visited last month, his first time on an airplane, his first time leaving India. She'd picked him up from the airport and driven him straight to her office, eager to show him what his teaching had created. Rajesh Patel had walked through the laboratory silently, touching the equipment with reverence, his eyes bright with tears. "Papa, what do you think?" she'd asked nervously. He'd turned to her, and the pride in his expression had made her cry. "Maya, Betty, you've taken what I taught you and made it something greater. But remember, all these machines, all this technology, they're tools. The real authentication happens here." He'd tapped her forehead. "And here." He'd placed his hand over her heart. "Never forget that." She never would. Every stone that came through her department received both technological analysis and human examination. She'd already caught 3 more synthetic diamonds that had been misidentified by other authenticators, and her reputation was growing. Sheikh Hassan introduced her to other collectors, recommended her services, and her calendar was now booked months in advance. The story of the waitress who'd spotted a $40 million fake in 2 seconds had become legendary in collector circles. Some people still didn't believe it, insisted she'd gotten lucky or that the story was exaggerated. But Maya didn't care. She knew the truth, and more importantly, she understood the lesson it taught. Technology was incredible. Modern gemological equipment could measure properties invisible to the human eye, could analyze chemical compositions, could detect things impossible to see otherwise. But technology was only as good as the questions it was asked to answer. It measured what it was programmed to measure, saw what it was designed to see. Human intuition, experience and observation could catch the things that fell between the cracks, the inconsistencies that machines weren't programmed to question. The best authentication Maya had learned came from combining both. Use the equipment, trust the science, but never ignore your instincts. Never dismiss that small voice that says something isn't quite right. And never assume that expertise only comes from expensive education or sophisticated tools. Sometimes wisdom lives in a small jewelry shop in Mumbai. Sometimes it resides in the hands of a waitress serving coffee. Sometimes the person who sees the truth most clearly is the one everyone assumes knows the least. Maya's phone buzzed with a message from Sheikh Hassan. New acquisition arriving next week. Major emerald, allegedly from Colombian mine, 1920s provenance. I want your eyes on it first, before any equipment. She smiled, typing back her confirmation. Then she walked to her workbench, picked up her father's old loupe, the one he'd given her when she left for Dubai, and held it up to the light. It was scratched, old-fashioned, worth maybe $10. But through this simple piece of glass, she'd learned to see the world the way her father did, with patience, attention, and respect for the truth that reveals itself to those willing to really look. And so ends the story of how a Mumbai waitress saved a sheikh from a $40 million fraud. Not with expensive equipment or advanced degrees, but with knowledge passed down through generations and the courage to trust what she saw. Her journey reminds us that sometimes the most valuable expertise doesn't come with credentials or price tags. It comes from dedication, experience, and the wisdom to know that seeing clearly has nothing to do with how much your tools cost. Thank you for reading. If you enjoyed this story, please share it with others who might appreciate the message. Let us know in the comments about times when your instincts told you something others missed. And remember, no matter your background or credentials, trust what you know. Your wisdom has value, even when the world suggests otherwise.